Okay, this is something that's a little bit unusual. A customer called me that she got my name from another customer that I had worked for, and they recommended to call me. She has this hand-hammered copper outdoor barbecue pit deal, and it's actually pretty cool. You can see the hand hammering effect. So they had this thing, it's outdoors obviously, and they had a particle board substrate, and this is it right here, that has over the last 9 years completely disintegrated, and this is what's left of it. So from this I was able to figure out what they were kind of doing with the substrate. They essentially had it cut into a circle with a big hole, looks like a donut, and then they put the build-up strips on the outside in order to give the side some strength as well, because it's so thick. This part here is so thick, but it's very flexible. So I mean, you can see there's no rigidity to this thing. So if you just had the piece here, you know, it would be not as good. So, and it looks like it was glued. You can see the leftovers of the glue sticking to this particle board. So it definitely was glued on. But what I need to do is replicate that. So I went to the lumber yard. Actually, in this particular case, I went to Home Depot and picked up some AC type of a plywood, because the particle board they used was no good at all. So I'm going to use plywood, and I'm going to essentially make a big disc to put in here. And then the only thing is there's a lip here, so it's got to go in just perfectly in order to fit. Yeah, it's one of those jobs that you just kind of, you know, you're like, okay, well, it was a referral, first of all, so that's important. If it's a referral, usually I do whatever I can to help the people. So it's a referral. I told her, you know, this is going to be basically a day's worth of work plus material, and you know, she was okay with that. So I'm fine with it. And if it takes me less than a day, I will charge her less. If it takes me more than a day, of course, you know the old adage. I told her it would take a day, so I can't really charge her more. So if it's going to take more than a day, I'm just going to eat it and, you know, chalk it up as goodwill, essentially. And she said that she trusts me, which is nice, after seeing the beautiful work that I did for her friends. So that's always nice when you get people like that are basically putting their trust in you just because of the work they've seen you do. That's always really nice. So here, all the way to here, it's about 47.5 inches. The plywood I got is exactly 48 inches. So the toughest thing right now is going to be creating the circle from the plywood. And as you know, when you have a circle to cut, there's only a few ways you can cut it. One would be with the jigsaw, and the other would be with a circle cutting template. And since I need to do this part too, this inner part, I'm going to go ahead and use the circle cutting template, because I can then shorten it up and do that center part and cut it out. So I'll do the outside first, and then shorten up my trammel arm and do the inside. So the first thing I need to do with this is find the center of this piece. Right there. Okay, I went ahead and drilled my hole, and that's a 1/4 inch hole. Just use the 1/4 inch bit. And this is actually a 5/16 threaded jig fixture, you know, type of a deal. Rockler makes this. So I just thread this in, and because it's a 1/4 inch, it takes a little bit of doing, but when you get it in, it starts to bite, and just pushing it, and then eventually it'll pull in. So you got that. This is my mark right here, that line right there. So this is not having to be like exactly perfect. I can kind of make it whatever dimension I want, but that's kind of what I was thinking it was going to be. So I'm just going to line that up with the center, and you can see it's the same. This is the same width as my opening in the slot, so there's no play there. And all I need to do is pull it down. Now I could put a washer on this if I wanted it to be a little bit more slippery, but there's actually a little bit of a washer already on it, so I'm not going to put another washer on. Let's just see how it holds. So obviously this is going to be a tough thing to do because I've got this to deal with, I've got this to contend with, so I just I have a hook up there. Whenever I need to get the vacuum out of my way, I actually put the hook up there and I adjust the length. So it works pretty well, but the only thing is because we're going in circles, and that's fixed, so ideally it would be nice to be able to spin this, but eventually you're not going to be able to spin it. It's just going to keep twisting. Base I have, so I'm going to basically cut halfway down in my first pass, and it's about halfway. So the rod will stop when it hits that thing, the bit will stop, and then I will rotate this, and eventually it's not going to let me go any further once I get past about 1/16 of an inch below the surface, because what's going to happen is this is going to bottom out on there. It's already set to the maximum. I just raise this up, start it, plunge it down, and then spin it around. Wish me luck with this nasty material. Hopefully the vacuum picks up a lot of it. But okay, I'm going to do the first test cut. I'm just going to make a little cut on each side, and I'm going to measure that and just make sure I got the right diameter. Okay, so now from that radius, I can change the size. But here's the kicker. So because it messed up a little bit, that's okay, because this piece, this isn't going to be anything big. I got most of it on the right diameter. So all I'm going to do is just flip the piece over and use this as my part that you don't see. So when it's all done, it'll be flipped over and you'll just see the bigger part. Once I unscrew and once I drill or route this center part out, I'm not going to have anything left. So I need to figure out for sure if this diameter is right. So I'm going to go ahead and take these screws out. Okay. So I can take this. Like so. Good, I'm going to use this as my gauge. So you can see there's a lip here. You can see that. So we've got basically a situation where I think what they did was they took their form, put it on, and then they actually bent the copper over it. So they created this lip right there. That this piece here was a little bit different. So I had to make this a little bit bigger. This hole had to be bigger in order to fit it in there. I have to build up this outside part. So I'm going to use 3 pieces of 3/4 inch plywood and build it up. So it's just here and, you know, however big. So that part doesn't need to be pretty. It just needs to be the right thickness. How can I get the material that I need out of this? This guy right here could be made into one, but then I realized that if I do that, I'm going to completely get rid of all the other material here. So that's just one piece if I were to route that out. What I was hoping for is strips. I could rip strips out of it and then cut them at angles in order to make the circle and then flush trim the circle. Okay, now as far as the size goes, theirs was pretty narrow, like 2.5 inches. I don't need to make the inner part radius. I just need to make the outer part radius. So I'm going to go a little over 2.5 inches. Okay, I just crudely estimated the length of my pieces. So I have all these ripped, and I made a whole bunch of them. And I figured I could get 2 pieces out of each rip, so I would need 4 rips. So I'm going to make this into an octagon. So it's going to have 8 sides, and I took the diameter of this and I just roughly said 48 inches. I calculated it to be 21.84 inches. As I come across here, I want it to overhang the outside, so I could actually round it up probably to 22.25. I'll cut that up. I can always trim it down if I need to. So 22.25 is what I cut it at. We'll see how this looks. I don't know if this is going to work or not. Looks like it might be a little too long. Okay, so we got these things cut to length. And it's to the outside miter to outside miter, it's 19 13/16. Right there. So 19 13/16, and that gives me essentially a lip, a barely any lip there. You can see it's pretty much, there's a tiny, tiny bit of a lip on the outside part. It's marginal. So we're basically maximizing the space. So if you look here though, this is I put a line here so I can get everything back exactly where it goes. So you can see right there. So this is how much material is left on the inside part. So when we flush trim it, it's going to go around here. It's only going to be about 3/4 inch left there. But okay, it's going to be all around there. So, all right. So these are cut. I've got the miter saw set up with the stop blocks. So these are all good. Now, of course, my DeWalt miter saw is not calibrated very well for cutting miters like this. So, and this is not a surprise to me. I mean, the DeWalt miter saw is very marginal at best for accuracy like this. So I've actually had to do this detent override right there, and I had to shift it over this way just a little bit. It's about halfway between where it should be, which is 22.5, and 22 even. So it's about 22.25 according to that little guy. But So this thing is just slightly off. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to adjust it and it's good. So I can take all the boards and go ahead and cut these guys. And then once I get 2 more layers of this, so basically I just need 2 more pieces, and that's going to give me my thickness. All right, finally get to this point where we can start assembling this. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this guy on. And to do that, I'm actually going to nail it with some 16 gauge nails, 1.25 inches, so they don't go through the 1.5 inches thickness here. So I've got these lines here, which is helpful. Just take that, and I can use that to put my marks on. Definitely want to get glue in that joint there, where the 2 meet. Now, in theory, it should be good right there, but because I want to make sure these are going to be really good, I'm going to go ahead and put these ones on as well. And I'm going to put a little bit of glue on the joint. Since we're going to be cutting off a lot of the joint, I'm just going to put it on a little bit. These pieces aren't wide enough to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and do this, although I don't like to do that. Normally the pieces are like this wide, but these are thinner. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, put some glue. If I can help it, I won't put a bunch of glue where I'm going to be routing, so it'll make it a little bit better. Okay, so that is almost the same thickness as this, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. I'm not going to need those. I thought maybe I was going to, but it's not going to be necessary. So I will let this cure for a little bit, and then once this is dried up for about an hour or so, I'm going to go ahead and work on flush trimming it. So I just glued this up. It's been here for a couple hours or 3 hours, and I used some clamps. I just pulled it away from the table countertop just to bring these guys together so that this would stay tight to one another. It was pretty good, but now for me to route this thing, there's two options. One, I can take my handheld router and run it, or I can, since I have this huge router table, either way, it's a lot of waste. So roughing out with my jigsaw, that way it'll help a little bit if I just eliminate some of this. Here you can see really well how the jig did not hold when I initially did it. I was concerned about it, that's why I kept checking it, and sure enough, it did. It went off about a quarter of an inch. That is right there. So if this was an important piece, I definitely wouldn't have used it. I wouldn't have tried it. I would have made sure it was fixed. The single hole with a nail through it was the best bet, not the slot. So that's what this is, but it's okay. This isn't going to be a problem. We're going to be using the bottom lip for the flush trim, so we're going to use the bigger lip, obviously. All right, so this is my normal blade that I use. This is in its longest position, like that right there. It does go through about a quarter inch, but that means that in the upstroke, it'll be missing it. I don't like to do that problem. So I'm just going to remove that, and I'm going to put this long blade on. This is actually from my Carvex. I kept these. That's it. That's all the battery. That was pretty much a brand new battery too, fresh battery. All but 1 1/4. So let me change batteries. The corded jigsaw probably would have gone through it a little easier. But then again, maybe not. It's always nice to see what these battery tools can do. All right, I just gotta deal with this. Man, that is a lot. We'll utilize the router table for this guy. We don't see, you guys don't see this one too often. Here. Basically, it's the same setup as I have on the other side. It's a 3 1/4 or 3 1/2 horsepower Milwaukee, the same exact. Okay, so that was the bit that was on there. Let me change this out. So this is the one I'm going to use, and this is my trasher bit, as I like to call it. So it's my pattern bit, but it's a trasher. This thing's got some nasty pits in it, so I use this for plywood like this, stuff that doesn't need to be nice. It's the perfect bit for that part, and then it's going to be cutting in to the basically half the material. This is about 1 1/4 inch, 1.5 inch tall bit, and then what I'll have to do is I'll have to flip it over and route the other side. See how this is like that? It's got that bar, so that bar goes in the track, and then the T-nut locks it down. So I can lock it in, and now what I can do is take the dust collection hose, and I'm going to put it basically right there where the bit is spinning, and it's going to collect the dust. Now the dust is going to be coming off this direction because it's going to be spinning like that. So we're going to be getting dust probably throwing straight out here. So I'm going to take that, put the dust collection port right there, and it should be able to collect a decent amount anyways. Should be better than nothing. This definitely would help if I had a bigger hose. So that's just, you know, that's my thing. I could use a bigger hose if I want to. This is where having a big table really helps. So normally you'd have to balance this thing on a little table. But okay, now what I need to do is I need to switch that back to the other kind of bit that's got the bearing on the top. Tell you, it's really nice to have really nice routers. This is a lot. This is a big task for a router. You know, I think a lot of people would probably use their shaper for this. Let's see if that's going to work. Oh, it's just not quite going to cut. So I've got this big monster hose for jobs like this. Basically, it does nothing else but large jobs like this. So it's a big, fat one. Plugs into the same port. You know what? I just remembered I have this long bit here, and this is a beater bit also. So this leaves grooves. So I don't know what I'm thinking. So this one is just, it's like a 16th too short. So this is pretty cool. I'll have a link to this guy here if anybody wants to look at this. Definitely a cool thing to have, especially in a situation like this. Because this shop would have been covered with plywood wood chips, which, by the way, is nasty. Plywood, nasty stuff. So what I was saying before was staggering these joints. If I would have staggered those joints, if this was a, let's just say this was a big arched door or something, and we were going to do a big arch, the pieces would be wider. So those would be staggered. So every other one would be there, so it'd be supporting that joint. But since this didn't really matter, but since our pieces were only 2.5 inches wide, it didn't allow us to do that. So with an octagon, maybe if we would have done like 12 sides, or yeah, probably 12 sides, we could have done that, but not with 8 sides. The pieces are too long. Okay, so that looks really good. Very clean. I would say this is definitely better than the original. So this thing's going to need some construction adhesive, and then we're just going to have to kind of like pull it tight and let it clamp up. Because right now, this thing is pretty bumpy on the other side, on the top. It's got a lot of dents on it. But this looks really good. Okay, I got this thing all cleaned up and vacuumed out. This thing's an absolute nightmare to get this new piece out. I had it in, but it's hard to get it out. So I'm going to go ahead and spread construction adhesive on it. Liquid nails, construction adhesive, and I'm just going to spread it out. This part here, I don't know. I don't think it needs it, but I'm just going to put a little bit on there. You really don't think it's going to do anything. It's a very odd looking thing, huh?
Mm-hmm. Why is that rusty? I want to take a piece. Like that.
All right, so here we go. This is what we have. So now, this is registering off the table saw and the outfeed and side feed table, so it's pretty flat, right? I'm just basically compressing the wood into the construction adhesive, flattening out the top, and it should, when it's all done, should be nice and flat. Once the glue dries, it should be really good. Glued up overnight, and as you can see, these guys are still clamped down pretty hard. It's going to be pretty heavy for sure, but now obviously the rigidity is much better. Fire pit goes in here, so that's what this is, a fire pit. But now it's got that rigidity that they want. Oh man, that is awesome. And look at how strong the sides are now. No more like feeling like the thing's going to cave in. This is really great. Totally rigid. Awesome. So this is really cool. I think they're going to be real happy with this. Need to pack this up and take it over to their house and give it to them. They'll be super happy.